Hi folks, it is Thibaut Van Dam here with another YouTube video, and for those of you who are not familiar with my channel, I am a DIY singer-songwriter and also guitar tutor based in Southeast London. Today I'm very excited to be back on my channel doing a video tutorial on how to play a song by Alex G called Sorry. I will also be doing a type of analysis of the song. So if this sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Thank you to everyone that does subscribe. I have passed 450 subscribers, so for me that's very exciting. It's actually amazing. I'm still sort of digesting. And let's go ahead and get into it. I don't want to take up too much time going through this video. In order to play this song, we'll start out by just saying that we are in standard tuning. E, A, D, G, B, E. And there are a series of different chords that you need to know how to play, and it helps to know specifically what voice works best. Now, I have found some chords on Ultimate Guitar for which I will introduce the link in the description below. I will say that I have added some edits to those chords. I have put a note in the comment section below on those tabs because I didn't think it was necessary to write necessarily a whole new series of tabs, but you'll see my comment below, and I'll also be teaching it with those edits in mind today. So in order to play this song, there are a series of different chords you need to know, including G sharp minor 7, E major 7, but also with the addition of this kind of minor third. So you'll play it as though it was open in a way, as though it was E minor, but with the major 7th interval. And I will explain how to play each of these chords, and then followed by B major 7. Again, with the open G. So this open G string is actually available throughout all of these chords. G sharp minor with a G, which already you can start to imagine why there's a conflict of interest there. Here we have major 7th, and here we have a minor 7th interval, so those are going to clash. The B, back to our E minor major 7. And as we get through the verse, these chords just repeat, basically, and it has a lot to do with the vocal melody as well. So I might just play through these chords. How do you play the G sharp minor 7? The G sharp minor 7 is played with the 4th fret on the E string, the 6th fret on the A string, and the 4th fret on the D string. I like to voice it like this, although some might like to voice it with a partial bar. The reason I don't like the partial bar is because I like to use my middle finger to play that minor 7th. And this is useful in particular because we're going to be rocking this finger ever slightly forward so that your fingertip, this part of your fingertip, actually touches the string, the open G string, and you'll mute it and you'll also play it open. And you can alternate, or you can introduce the open G where you want more disharmony. I think that this was very deliberate in terms of songwriting. This was on purpose by Alex G to fulfill the kind of lyrical and atmospherical goals of the song. Because it could have just been played like that. But actually, I think throughout the song you can hear this kind of sustaining G note. So moving on to the E minor major 7, we're calling it E minor major, but really I would think of it as an E major 7. And then it has this kind of addition of this minor third note. It's easy to think about it like an E minor chord. So for example, if you were playing E minor as though you were doing a bar with your ring finger playing the 2nd fret of the A string, the open E, 2nd fret of the A string with the ring finger, and your pinky playing the 2nd fret of the D string, and then just letting it kind of go down actually, and playing the middle finger on the 1st fret of the D string. And it's weird because when you hear this, this actually is a B chord. This is a B sus4, which omits the root, a rootless B chord, where we have the suspension 4 of B, we have the octave of B, and we have the major third of B. And actually, when you hear this chord in the context of the song, I think it's more likely we're hearing a version of B than we are hearing a version of E. Kind of like this. If we were going to be reductionistic about it. But anyway, it's worth pointing out that the voice is deliberate so that we play this E, and that way we have tension. That's the point of this. Moving on, we have this B major 7 chord, where we're playing the 7th fret with our index finger, followed by the 9th fret with our ring finger, and then the 8th fret with our middle finger. Again, keeping the middle finger straight, and then we can introduce this kind of, by moving that that middle finger slightly, we can introduce the G if we want it, or we can choose to remove it. It's entirely up to you as you play through. And if you don't like the disharmony, you don't have to actually play it with that note at all. You can use this kind of soft area of your middle finger to mute the G string entirely. And it'll sound pleasant, but you'll notice that it doesn't, it takes something away from the way that it all sounds together with the words. So now I'm just going to play through the verse, and then we'll talk about how to play the instrumental. I'll get my cure, wait in the car. I won't remember who you are. I'll get my cure, wait in the car. I won't remember who you are. Okay, so moving on, we're going to play this instrumental section, which I believe actually you could think of musically as the chorus. So we're going to play the same B major 7 chord, but instead of playing it down here on the low E string, we're actually going to shift that voice up to the A string. And you'll notice that all the notes are identical. That's because this is a B3, I believe, just like this is also the B3. They are the same. They're identical notes. Yeah. And we're going to play this B major 7 with the index finger on the 2nd fret of A, our ring finger on the 4th fret of D, and then our middle finger on the 3rd fret of G. And the only difference here, the only reason why we're using a different voicing here, is to gain access. Well, it does a few things all at once. One is that we are now occupying the space of the G string. So that disharmony, gone. We don't have the disharmony now. Now we have resolution. The B major 7 is going to chime in, resolving to the B. So our major 7th is only a semitone away. It's also supplemented by that open B string. That's why we're using this voice, because it gets rid of the prior tension, and it also introduces this kind of allusion to total resolve. So that is the new version of the B major 7 that we'll use. To the G minor 7. And you can play the E in different ways, but in practice and in theory, I would say that it's played as an E5. And you could play it like an E major. You'll notice that the E minor doesn't make as much sense. We find out that we're actually playing a type of E major chord here. And we could play the full major if we wanted, but it's not really in our interest to give away the enigma of the song. So by playing the E5, 5 chords work much like suspended chords in the sense that sus4 chords, we don't know if this is major or minor. Or like that. Same deal with 5 chords. Both would be theoretically possible, so you wouldn't be able to tell as a listener. The second part of this instrumental chorus, I would say, goes... And again, choosing to omit the third if you want, but if you're going to play a third, play it as a major. And the weird thing there is that you could use either voice, but it is the E5 in this open position that feels more accurate to me. The reason why I played this E, however, is because it demonstrates truly what key we're in. And that's why that section is, I believe, the chorus, because it exposes the reality of the song. The reality of the song is that we are in the key of B major. But that's just too obvious, isn't it, right? Right? That would just be the 1, 2, 3, 4. And it would vanquish any sense of enigma that we notice throughout the song. So that's why none of those chords are being played as full major or minor chords, because it keeps some of the enigma alive. Another thing to point out here is that when we finally hear this chord, the E major, which is our major 4 chord we actually learn that by playing the E minor, we're actually playing the minor plagal. So the minor plagal involves the minor 6th chord relative to the entirety of the key and the scale. So this is a sound that we're really familiar with. This is our 1, our 4, and then our 5, and then our 4, and then our minor 4 chord, and then our 1. So imagine this feeling of major 4, minor 4, 1 is the minor plagal, and it's because it involves this minor 6. This interval, this minor third of the 4 chord is the minor 6th of the key. And so what that essentially is doing is it's allowing us to introduce a note that is chromatic and not from the scale, but it is not so close to our tonic that it feels like it's rubbing up the wrong way against it. So it doesn't feel like tension, it feels more like a type of sadness. And we notice now where that G fits in. It is the minor 6th of the key, and it was being played all along. Whether we played it over the 6 chord with the G minor, right? It's minor 6 over the minor 6 chord. Or here, where we had this kind of combination of a B major chord, B major sus4, or also E minor with kind of E major, but actually minor 4 chord, we'll say. Or even here, when we see the B major chord. And this is where we feel probably the most tension. It makes the least sense because it's the minor 6 over our tonic, which is probably why it doesn't actually appear there. Get my cure, wait in the car. But just to give you an idea of how this note fits in with a melody, it could fit in very easily over the B major chord, like that. And that makes much more comprehensive sense in a linear melodic way, right? Like, it feels very sad, and it touches on that minor 4 chord, this minor plagal cadence. And that's the constructed social utility of that chord. So that's why it has that kind of effect. Now let's try to string together these ideas of the lyrics and why this ambiguity, why persisting with the minor 6 interval throughout the song is so useful. Well, the first thing I'll say is because the minor 6 interval inside a given major key often alludes to the minor plagal, which it usually induces a sense of sadness and nostalgia, what's happening is throughout the song, by sustaining the minor 6, the entire song is characterized by both disharmony and creepy nostalgia. And this is kind of a really weird device because we usually only hear the minor 6 interval when it's played over the 4 chord. But when we hear it in this context, we're hearing it over the 6 chord. We're hearing it over the 4 chord. We're also hearing it over maybe the 1, maybe not. And then we're actually hearing it go away. We're hearing it go away when we get to our instrumental. And so I think the purpose of this is both to make the listener feel both nostalgic and feel that sentimentalness, but simultaneously to feel that disharmoniousness. Like, am I remembering things right? Was it really all that good? And when we actually take a look at the lyrics, all of this stuff really adds up a lot. For example, here, this opening lyric, I'll get my cure, wait in the car. This sounds like what a parent says to their kid when they're going to get their drugs from the pharmacy, basically. So this could be a nostalgic thing, and it also could be a creepy or unfortunate memory. I won't remember who you are. This could also, this introduction of the sustaining minor sixth interval could speak in another way to what I would think of as the dissolution of the story and home. See, because so fundamental to songwriting and how we interpret it in a modern sense is this feeling of home and a singular key. So when we have a note that's chromatic and we have that note outside the key and we have that sustained throughout the entirety of the song, it yields unexpected results usually, but also it tends to have a dissolutioning effect. It will tend to make the idea of the story, whatever the story about home was, start to feel like it makes less sense. And that's a really interesting aspect of this whole thing. It's drawing on nostalgia to deconstruct the nostalgia in a sense. So I think this imagery, there's a lot of enigma. We're getting kind of a really small snapshot, a small image of this kind of idea of what's going on. I think the use of the minor six over this, of the minor six interval over the minor six chord is really weird in the sense, or I'll say the flat six interval over the minor six chord of the key, which is inherent to the key, speaks to this idea of whether the cure itself is actually the cure. Like, I'll get my cure. This idea of the cure could be, you could think of as home. You want the cure. Whatever the problem is, one would be the solution. The introduction of this minor six interval makes you question, is what we thought home was, is it actually home? I don't think so. As we move on, this idea of I won't remember, that kind of dissolutioning, this kind of feeling of like home is falling apart, the walls are dilapidated, the thing is deconstructing. Let's move on to the next section of lyrics. So we have, I look at you and feel the same. Could you forgive me? It's a question. This uncertainty in the chord, the tension in the chord, raises the feeling of curiosity. So to hear, could you forgive me for that pain? The pain seems absolute in this moment. But actually, this question of can you forgive me? First off, the second verse seems to be reciprocal of the second verse seems reciprocal of the first, in that this goes both ways. This miscommunication, this thing that's dissolving, this experience that seems to be shared seems to be branching off into individual experiences which share similar questions, ironically, about the experience. So it sounds like maybe if Alex G is saying that he's a kid being, neglected or something by his parents, maybe he does the same thing. Maybe that's what he's saying. And this question, this more universal question, could you forgive me for that pain? Pariah kid lost in a game. So, I think that there's other things. This idea of pain, discomfort in the harmony also speaks to the notion of pain. Discomfort, you could say, is also pain, musically speaking. I think a pariah kid, outcast, outlier, right? Again, a lot of these things seem to be musically communicated. And yeah, I think that the use of the minor sixth here seems to be drawing on both the feeling of nostalgia, but by sustaining it through other aspects of the song, where it doesn't fulfill its minor plagal role, it ends up making the whole thing sound kind of creepy and disharmonious. That's my 2 cents on the writing of the song. I am, of course, not Alex G, so I don't know what he's really talking about. But this is just an interpretation of it and why I think the piece of music made so much sense to me. Let me know if there are other aspects of this song or songwriting that you really enjoy. and if you think that I've missed out on something here. Thank you so much for watching. I think that just about covers it for the song, how to play the various parts. I think the interesting thing also about the song is how resolving the chorus is. Because there are no words there. So in some ways, the answer is something we feel more than we think, perhaps. Thank you so much for watching. If you did find this interesting and helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Thanks again to everyone that does subscribe, and I will see you at the next video. Ciao for now.